being here. Hey, Frednia. Oh, yay. Awesome. Hi, everyone. It's Manisha. It is Tuesday, 5:30 Pacific. Thanks for being here. If you're here live, oh, thank you. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I miss you guys too. So today, and if you have questions while I'm chatting, please let me know. Today, I'm going to talk about kind of a simple topic, and I always think sometimes it's really simple and it's going to be short, but I apparently really like to chat, so sometimes I just go longer than I originally think I'm going to. Hey, Amanda, good to see you here. So today, this is a little bit simple, but I want to talk about kind of taking care of ourselves and in the context of triggers and getting triggered by different things, because it's interesting. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, which most of the people in this group are, I think we have like a couple of people from the Southern Hemisphere, but in the hot weather, I find that sometimes we are a little bit more easily irritated. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but sometimes I feel that way. And I've been noticing that, like this weekend, I was invited to go to a picnic where I didn't really know that many people, but I'm still like relatively new where I'm living, and I wanted to meet some more people, and it was lovely. Like everybody was great. But because I didn't really know that many people, I was very lovingly asked, like, oh, what made you move here? And, all of these questions. And again, all great, right? People were friendly. They wanted to get to know me. And what I started to realize was, I don't know, maybe like an hour and a half to about 2 hours in, I could feel myself like maxing out. And I wasn't getting triggered per se, but I was just like foggy. I was starting to get foggy. I was feeling so tired. I was feeling like if someone asks me that same question one more time, I just don't think I can answer it. And then I connected in with somebody I've known for a little while, and I was talking to her, but I could just feel myself like fading really fast. And what I was noticing in that is that there have been so many times in the past where that has been the exact case. And I've just kind of pushed myself to keep going and having the conversation. And I recognize that, like, if you're in a work situation or something is pressing, like, you can't just leave, But what I started to realize was just in that moment of how frequently I had sort of done that to myself in places where I didn't always have to, and how that impacted my nervous system, and how that impacted just like my stress level, and not in a way that was particularly obvious. Like I wasn't like feeling stressed. I was actually just on the surface almost feeling like the opposite. Like I felt like I could go take a nap like in the corner of, the corner of the park there, because I was just getting so foggy. And everybody experiences this sort of maxing out in different ways. For some people, it could be like a lot of irritation, or people are saying something and you just feel like easily triggered, or, in my case, I was just feeling really foggy. Like, and for me, that's a pretty strong indication when that's happening. Like I had to excuse myself, and I could tell that the person I was talking to maybe didn't even completely get what I was doing or what I was saying, or like why I maybe did that. And I can always talk about it with her later. But in that moment, I was like, I have to just gracefully like exit this scenario, because it was just getting to be too much. And this is, I'm talking about this, it's sort of like a silly example, but I would suspect that many people have this version of something happen to them weekly, if not more often. But I think it's just this idea of really checking in with ourselves and knowing like what it is that we need sort of on a day-to-day basis, or, for example, in the morning or in the evening, to really just make sure that we are taking care of our energy. And I've talked about taking care of our energy in the past, just like we're taking a shower, we're brushing and flossing our teeth. It's like, how are we really taking care of our energy? How are we waking up in the morning? What is the first thing that we're doing in the morning? I think last time or the time before I was talking about the phone, And, I will go in and out of different habits with my phone. And currently my phone happens to also be my alarm, which isn't always ideal because then other things start happening on your phone once you take it off of sleep mode or whatever it is. And so I have like less control over the timing with which I take things in. I actually have like very few notifications that come up because like I want to control that as well. Because I want to decide when I'm going to see something or what or how frequently it's going to come through or like all of these different things. So, these are just examples of ways that we can start to think about how am I setting myself up for the day or for the week, and what information am I allowing in, like right when I wake up or like right when I'm in like just a more open state. So this was interesting too. I can't remember who I was speaking with, but they were talking about like being in a workshop setting actually, and the workshop was intended to kind of go to help them go deeper into just experiencing something. And that's a great, here I'm just reading comments here. That's a great action point. My notification, yeah, notifications are, I stopped. The only thing that comes through are texts, and nothing else comes through because, yeah, they're so distracting. I mean, even like I'm on a computer and the texts come through on the computer, and sometimes I just like shut all of that off because I'm like, I get really easily distracted. So yeah, it's just noticing like what helps us and what supports us and like what really throws us off, and making those little tweaks. So this woman was talking about this workshop where the point was to kind of drop in and go a little bit deeper and all of these things. So she was like in that space where she was allowing herself to do that, but then what she noticed happening was like she was actually taking too much in from some of the other participants. And so this is like a different scenario, but interesting because like we really want to watch our energy field no matter where we are. And so especially like, I've lived in cities most of my life. I'm now living in a place that is like so not a city. So it even feels different to me, but what I notice is when I am in busier places, like I do, not in a way that anymore, like it definitely was defensive at some points, because it almost felt like I had to like lock down and like protect myself from what was going on. But now I'm like just very watchful of like how open I allow myself to be, and sort of what is allowed to come in through that open channel. Where am I now? I am in Ashland, Oregon. So totally different part of the country. I'm in a small mountain town. It's beautiful. It's just a very different environment, and it's filled with nature, and I still love cities. And so anytime I'm on the East Coast, I'm always down for a visit to New York or DC. But just my nervous system really appreciates this in this very moment in time. And so I think that, just in terms of the whole energy field thing is like, start to notice. So if this conversation or what I'm saying is kind of like, oh, I don't really know if my energy field is open or closed or what's going on, start to pay attention, like when you're in different places. Hey, Leda, Dara, so yay, so nice to see you guys. These are, okay, Amanda's saying, these are things I struggle with very much. Yeah. So when we're not, so I was going to start to say, when we're not aware of these things, they can be really challenging. But to be honest with you, like sometimes even when we are aware of these things, it can take a lot of tweaks and sort of adjustments to kind of get to a place where we can feel internally solid. And what I find right now is that, because of so much external chaos in the world, like every day, we're looking at something, or we're watching the news, or we're reading something, or like we're dealing with like colleagues or life in general. If you're dealing with humans, essentially, in any aspect of your life, like you have to kind of watch your energy, and start to notice like what, where, like start to notice how it affects you depending on where you're going or where you are. Like if you're on a crowded subway or on a metro or on the street, how does that feel? Hey, Julia, good to see you. If you are walking through a park, how does that feel? I mean, those are like obviously very opposite examples, but then, you know, I tend to, when I was working in more office-like settings, it would go into a conference room, for example, you know, and you'd have like 20 people sitting in there, and you know, just like if that's your world, or if that's part of your world, start to notice like, what does it feel like to walk in? Like, are you a person who's sensitive, where you can like kind of feel and sense into what's going on? Okay, must try and get give them hugs for me, and yes, then turn off your phone notifications. That's awesome. Thanks for being here. You know, start to notice like when you're in those spaces with a lot of people, like, are you the kind of person that can sort of sense into or feel into what's going on in the space, and in such a way where it can be maybe helpful, because your job is such that it's actually really good to be in tune with what's going on with people in order to have conversations with them, or you know, do whatever work you're doing with them? Or does it feel like it totally bombards your system? And you know, I think bombard is kind of a strong word, but I'm using it because I think that's what it can actually feel like. You know, when we do have like sensitive systems and we walk into a space and we can feel a lot of what other people are experiencing in that space, and we don't really want to be feeling that, but we can, just because that's one of our gifts, right? Because it can be a real gift to be able to do that. But if we're not really totally sure of how we're wired and how to filter that gift so that we can use it in ways that are helpful, but not in ways that overload our nervous systems, then that can become problematic. Because what I find with a lot of clients is that we talk about just that overload feeling of our nervous system. So if we are walking around, you know, commuting to work, like in a board meeting, or even like if you do other kinds of work, or even if you're just like out to dinner at a restaurant, you know, and you're kind of feeling into a lot of different people in that space, and you're not really sure how to filter your energy or filter that energy that's coming in, you can start picking up a lot of what's happening on the outside. And then by the time you have to like make a decision or think through something, or like talk to your child or talk to your spouse or have an important conversation, you're like so maxed out that you either, you know, you might be foggy, you can't think, you feel a little bit checked out, or everything's like super annoying, or it's like super irritating. Like even if you're having a conversation and the other person is just saying something like quote unquote normal or fairly reasonable, like your reaction could just be, what do I usually say? It's like exaggerated. It's like an exaggerated reaction to what is actually happening. And that's like a really big sign. Like when we are having any kind of exaggerated reaction to the scenario at hand, this is a really good opportunity to pause. Again, I always say this, maybe not in the very moment, because you can't in the moment depending on the situation, but just to really, like, if you can internally be like, wait, what's going on? Like, this actually doesn't make any sense. It's me. So yeah, so this happened to you today. And if you would like, you're welcome to share, and we can talk that through. But yeah, it happens. It happens, you know, for most people, like often, because we are so bombarded, we are so overloaded. And so I think that any breaks that we can take to give ourselves like white space or open space can be so helpful. And this is where like that practice of doing this on some sort of regular basis, which I talked about last time, like having some sort of regular meditation practice or stillness practice. You know, I will always say meditation because that's kind of my go-to, and I'm not trying to impose that. I'm maybe trying to impose that a little bit for other people, but not trying to push it on you if that's not something that you're really interested in learning. And However, for me, that is a really important practice. But seriously, it could be like a quiet walk. You know, I do recommend that whatever it is, even if it's movement, because I think that movement is like a totally valid way to do this, especially if, and I mean, I'm not going to go down this tangent for too long, but especially if you've had maybe a lot of trauma in your history. And so sitting quietly can actually be very triggering. And so that may not be like a great or appropriate, I should say, that might not be an appropriate practice for you. So doing something where you're a little more active, but also like more internal or a little quiet can be really helpful. Yeah, Tanisha saying I really needed to pause. Yeah, and that's the thing is sometimes when we are, sometimes when we're in a state where we're constantly going, and that's just the nature of what we're doing because it's like our habitual movement pattern. We almost forget that that's an option, you know. And then the other thing is sometimes we pause, but it's so uncomfortable that we like really can't stay in that pause for very long because all of these like symptoms in our body, or sensations I should say, in our body will come up. And if anyone can relate to that, let me know because I think it's really common. I mean, this happens on a pretty regular basis. Like I'm super sensitive in my body, and so it actually gives me a lot of information. So if I'm feeling off in my body, or like I feel a twinge, or my stomach feels a little queasy, I'm like, oh, what's going on here? Like something's off. And so, you know, I've been doing this long enough where I can sense that pretty quickly, and then start to pull back a little bit and be like, okay, what's this about? Like what just happened? Because sometimes our lives are moving so fast that we'll have an uncomfortable sensation and we'll just kind of keep it moving because we have to. And then we'll later like kind of feel a little anxious or kind of feel a little bit sick, but like so many things have happened in our day since that started that we're like, I don't even know why I feel this way. Thanks, Amanda, for being here. Yep, you can catch the replay for the rest of the time. Yeah. And so if you can start to just be a little bit mindful and start tracking that, you know, again, like you might not have time in the exact moment to like deal with it fully, but if you could just start tracking that, like, oh, I started to feel like this when this situation happened, then you can go back and start to really track for yourself, like, what was this really about? Because for the most part, it's often not about the thing that's happening on the outside. That's often just like a portal for us to get some more information about, to then go in and explore, like, what is this actually about for me? And again, you know, it's not that sometimes like the thing in the moment is also not something that you have to speak to or that you have to shift, or that's not quite right. But what I find that is like when you have that more exaggerated response, excuse me, when you have that more exaggerated response to something, that's when it's like, okay, well, this is a thing, but like really something else is actually getting triggered. And awesome, Tanisha. I will connect with you afterwards to connect with some of those people. Thank you. So I hope this is making sense. If you have questions or comments or thoughts about this, you know, let me know. But just to kind of circle back a little bit, what I first started talking about was, you know, really, how are we taking care of ourselves? Like, how are we starting our day? How are we kind of tuning into our field of energy? What does that feel like, or how are we experiencing that on a day-to-day basis? Some things that you can start to do if this is like a little bit newer to you is notice the environments that you're in and notice how they make you feel, and notice which ones maybe bring up some anxiety, which ones feel good. And it's, you know, not that the ones that are bringing up anxiety, that means like, oh, okay, they're bringing up some anxiety, so like I can't be in those, because one, that's probably not an option for most people. And also sometimes that anxiety is really just like giving us some information about something that we can clear within our system. You know, there's been plenty of situations or places or people where I have, like, in the past felt anxious or felt uncomfortable. And when I've worked through what that really was for me, it wasn't necessarily that person or wasn't necessarily that place, but it was like what that was bringing up for me. And so as I did the work to go deeper to figure that out and then to work with that within myself, whether it required some sort of healing or, you know, some level of awareness or, you know, taking care of myself differently so that before I went into those environments, like I was hydrated and I had eaten enough and I had made sure I got a good night's sleep, or, you know, whatever the things are to really take care of yourself. Yes, Tanisa, thank you. I will do that. Awesome. You know, do start to notice those things and do that because, and then you can like check in, like, okay, well, I'm feeling pretty good today. I've started my day off in a way where I haven't taken in a lot of stuff, especially in those morning hours or morning minutes, even because we're so like vulnerable. Like we wake up and we're like in this dreamy state and our consciousness is open, and then, you know, you're on your phone and you're like on Facebook or you're on Instagram. Again, love these things because I get to like connect with all of you. So I am not like slamming the things. I just think it's really important to be really mindful of like when we're taking them in and how we're taking them in. And is it the first thing you look at in the morning? Is it the last thing you look at before you go to bed? Because again, you're just in this like more open state where you're welcome to me. So thank you so much for being here. You know, you're in this very open state, and so this just can be a super vulnerable state for us. And so it's just like, I mean, it's our bodies, it's our mind. So I mean, to not be mindful of like what we're taking in and how we're taking it in can really affect us, you know, on an emotional level, on a mental level, just concentration, on a health level, on a spiritual level, all of these things. So I'm pretty sure I just went off on a tangent. So thanks all of you for hanging in with me. So yeah, checking in with your environment, checking in with your energies, like when you're in these different environments, and just start maybe, and then the last thing was just tracking some of the different ways. Like if you notice that you're getting triggered during the day, just like if you can, you have a little notebook, put it on your phone, whatever, just start tracking like, what is the reaction I'm having, and generally like what's happening in that moment, because then you'll start to recognize like, oh, these are the types of things that have really been getting under my skin, and what is this really about? And like, oh, this happened like over the week 3 times in these different ways, and on the outside those things look different, but when you really start to go under the surface, you're like, oh, actually they have this thing in common, and like this is actually the thing that is like bothering me or affecting me. Like maybe somebody's crossing my boundaries. Maybe somebody's like taking advantage of my kindness, or, you know, maybe, I can't think of another example right now, but I think you get what I'm saying. So they can be things that across the board under the surface are actually the same, even though on the outside they appear to be different. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you all so much for being here. I love having conversations and seeing all your lovely names. So if you have any questions, as always, please put them in the comments, or you can send me a message. If you notice this is something that you're dealing with in your life and you're like, oh, I can see a thread, but I can't see under the thread, just reach out and we can schedule a call and just talk about whether working together would be a good idea. So thanks for being here and have a wonderful week, and I will see you next Tuesday at this time. All right, bye everyone.